Every Italian red wine from Tuscany explained, and a sincere apology in advance to every foreign word I'm about to say. Tuscany runs from the Apennine Mountains in the east, all the way down to the Tyrrhenian Sea in the west, and that geography creates two completely different wine worlds inside the same regional name on a label. Inland, rolling hills, clay and limestone soils, cold winters, and the altitude that gives Sangiovese that sharp, electric acidity. On the coast, the Maremma and Bolgheri, the sea moderates everything, and the wines come out richer, rounder, more internationally oriented. Same label, two completely different identities. Now, Sangiovese, the grape at the center of almost everything here, is not one single thing. Same grape, and depending on altitude, soil, and clone, you get anything from a bright, cherry-forward Chianti Classico to something enormous and almost severe from Montalcino. That range alone is genuinely astonishing. Brunello di Montalcino, Italy's most prestigious red wine by most measures. And, wait, let me actually slow that down, 'cause the rules around this wine are something else entirely, and they matter. 100% Sangiovese, locally called Brunello, a biotype known as Sangiovese Grosso for its larger berry and thicker skins, grown in the hills surrounding the medieval hilltop town of Montalcino in the southern Siena province. Yields are tightly capped. The wine cannot leave the cellar until January 1st of the 5th year after harvest. For the Riserva, it's the 6th year, meaning grapes picked in 2020 can't legally reach shelves until 2025 at the absolute earliest. Minimum 2 years in oak on top of all that. Traditional producers use large Slavonian casks, botti grandi, slow oxidation, no wood overwhelming the wine. More modern approaches blend those with smaller French barriques or tonneaux, rounder, more polished style. Knowing which way a cellar leans tells you a lot about what's waiting in the glass. Young Brunello hits you with dark cherry, dried rose, tobacco, and a mineral, almost blood orange edge to the acidity that you simply don't find anywhere else. The tannins are firm, serious. This is not a wine trying to charm you on day one. It demands time. Give it 10 to 15 years, and something completely different happens. The tannins go silky, the fruit shifts into dried fig, leather, forest floor, and the whole structure integrates into something seamless and complex. Great Brunello at 20 or more years is about as profound as Italian red wine gets. At the table, it wants things that can match its depth. You want to be drinking it alongside cinghiale, wild boar, or a bistecca alla Fiorentina that's been sitting over the coals just long enough. It works beautifully with aged pecorino, with braised lamb, with pasta finished with black truffle. Not a Tuesday night wine. The zone divides into 4 broad areas that taste genuinely different. The north, higher altitude, cooler temperatures, gives more elegant floral wines with real finesse. The south, lower and warmer, pushes darker fruit and more concentration. The east, clay-heavy, drives the mineral backbone. The west, closest to the sea, tends to produce wines that open sooner and feel rounder in youth. On the label, Vigna, or vigneto, followed by a name, means single vineyard, the most geographically precise expression available. Great vintages: 2010, 2012, 2015, 2016, 2019. Now, Chianti Classico. Most important Tuscan red in terms of reach and relevance. And here's the clarification that matters most before anything else. Chianti Classico and plain Chianti are not the same wine. I mean, they're not even close. Chianti Classico became its own DOCG in 1996, with a specific geographic zone in the provinces of Florence and Siena, and significantly stricter rules than the broader Chianti denomination. Minimum 80% Sangiovese, 3 tiers. The annata at the base, fresh, vibrant, food-friendly, released after October 1st of the following year. The Riserva requires minimum 24 months of aging and brings noticeably more structure and depth. Then, Gran Selezione at the top, minimum 90% Sangiovese, minimum 30 months of aging, exclusively single vineyard or best barrel selection grapes. Worth knowing, from the 2027 vintage onward, international varieties will be completely banned from Gran Selezione, all Sangiovese. That should only sharpen these wines further, and honestly, yeah, it should. In 2021, the Consorzio approved 11 subzones, UGAs, Unità Geografiche Aggiuntive, that can now appear on Gran Selezione labels, inspired by Burgundy's village-level designations. Panzano, Radda, and Gaiole, at higher altitude, produce more elegant, aromatic, finely structured wines. Greve and San Casciano range from rich and powerful to lighter and more floral. A UGA on a label means you're holding the most geographically specific Tuscan red money can buy. At annata level, sour cherry, dried herbs, dried tomato leaf, a savory, almost meaty quality on the finish. Lively acidity. This is a wine that drinks effortlessly with a bowl of ribollita, that makes pappardelle al ragu taste even better than it already does, that absolutely belongs alongside a bistecca Fiorentina, or grilled lamb chops, or a sharp sheep's cheese with bread. At Gran Selezione, the profile shifts entirely. Black cherry, graphite, tobacco, leather, iron. Same grape, completely different scale. Capable of 10 to 20 years in the cellar without blinking. And here's the thing. If a Chianti Classico tastes like jam, something has gone wrong. The real thing has electric acidity and a long, mineral, savory finish. This is the wine that converts people to Italian reds. No better place for most people to actually start. Vino Nobile di Montepulciano. And before anything, this has nothing to do with Montepulciano di Abruzzo. Different grape, different region entirely. Vino Nobile is made from Prugnolo Gentile, a Sangiovese clone specific to the hilltop town of Montepulciano in southern Tuscany. It sits character-wise between Brunello's weight and Chianti Classico's leaner elegance, thick-skinned, structured, but with a plum and violet quality that feels more generous than Brunello and more substantial than most Chianti Classicos. Minimum 70% Prugnolo Gentile, 2 years aging minimum, 3 for the Riserva, at least 12 months in oak. Young, ripe cherry, plum, violets, black pepper. With age, leather, tobacco, dried herbs, forest floor. 10 to 15 genuinely rewarding years. Because it sits between those two famous names without quite getting their attention. The quality-to-value ratio here is consistently excellent. You want to drink it with something that earns it. A slow-braised meat that's been in the pot for hours, or wild boar, or a duck ragout, or aged pecorino di Pienza with a little honey on the side. Anyone who loves Brunello but wants something more immediately drinkable will find exactly that here. Sassicaia changed everything. Not a Sangiovese wine, and that's exactly why it matters. In the 1940s, a Tuscan nobleman planted Cabernet Sauvignon and Cabernet Franc on his coastal Bolgheri estate, inspired by Bordeaux. Stayed a private family wine for decades, the first commercial vintage released in 1968. Today, Sassicaia has its own DOC, the only single-estate wine in Italy with its own individual appellation. Typically 85% Cabernet Sauvignon and 15% Cabernet Franc, aged 24 months in French oak with 1/3 new barrels. Blackcurrant, cedar, graphite, wild herbs, that scrubby Mediterranean vegetation the Italians call macchia, and iron on the nose. Full-bodied, silky tannins with real grip, high acidity, a finish that goes considerably longer than you expect. At 5 to 10 years, it's already surprisingly approachable. Dense, but not shut down. At 15 to 25 years, it opens into something genuinely majestic. Tobacco, leather, graphite, black truffle, cassis. Great vintages hold and develop for 40 years. You pour it alongside roasted lamb or a dry-aged beef that's been properly grilled. Or you drink it with game birds. Or you let it sit next to an aged, hard cheese and just watch what happens. For Bordeaux lovers, honestly, this wine needs absolutely no further explanation. Tignanello invented the Super Tuscan as a concept. First vintage, 1971. Approximately 80% Sangiovese, 15% Cabernet Sauvignon, 5% Cabernet Franc. Aged in small French barriques rather than the large Slavonian casks that were standard in Tuscany at the time. That was the radical act, right there. Black cherry, cassis, tobacco, dark chocolate, dried violets on the nose. You feel the Sangiovese underneath, but the Cabernet adds a density and richness the grape simply couldn't reach alone. Medium full-bodied, refined tannins, bright acidity, long finish with cedar and spice. More drinkable young than Brunello, more complex than standard Chianti Classico, more Tuscan feeling than Sassicaia. It sits exactly between those worlds. That's its genius. Good at 5 to 8 years, and genuinely extraordinary at 15 to 20. It drinks magnificently with a bistecca Fiorentina, or with aged pecorino, or with wild boar, or with a beef stew that's been finished with black truffle and left to rest. For anyone moving from New World Cabernets toward Italian Reds, this is the natural bridge. Ornellaia, first vintage 1981. Where Sassicaia goes essentially full Cabernet, Ornellaia plays the whole blend. Cabernet Sauvignon as the base, with Merlot, Cabernet Franc, and Petit Verdot all contributing real substance. The Merlot, inspired by Pomerol in Bordeaux, adds lushness and generosity that sets it apart from the leaner Sassicaia. Ripe black cherry, plum, vanilla, cocoa, rosemary, sage, Mediterranean scrub, full, velvety, polished, with fine-grained tannins and beautifully integrated oak. People consistently describe it as the most seductive of the great Bolgheri Reds, and it's a hard argument to win against. Each vintage also carries a unique artwork on the label, one of the most collectible wine objects in Italy. Top vintages develop beautifully over 15 to 25 years, and they're most at home on the table with roasted meats, with truffle risotto, with venison, or with an aged hard cheese that can hold its own against all that depth. Masseto, 100% Merlot from a specific patch of heavy blue-gray Pliocene clay on that same coastal property. A patch of ground that does something quite extraordinary to the grape. Black mulberry, black currant, tobacco, dark chocolate, rosemary, leather. Powerful but never heavy, with a precision that borders on the astonishing, and tannins that are dense but polished to the finest grain. Alcohol often runs between 14.5% and 15.5%. The sheer concentration carries it in complete balance. You drink it with roasted beef tenderloin or with braised oxtail that's been reduced down to something almost lacquered. Or you pour it over truffle pasta and accept that your evening has peaked. Morellino di Scansano. From the Grosseto hills of the Maremma coast, between the rivers Ombrona and Albigna. Morellino is what they call Sangiovese here. Minimum 85% required, up to 15% complementary Tuscan varieties. Warmer and drier than inland Tuscany, sea close. Soils predominantly sandy and silty clay. Sangiovese here is relaxed, generous, wild strawberry, blackberry, Mediterranean herbs, a touch of smoke and earth. Medium body, moderate tannins, good freshness, genuinely pleasurable without needing years in a cellar. The Riserva takes on more structure, dried fig, leather, pepper, comfortable in the cellar for 8 to 12 years. It belongs alongside grilled sausages, or a wild boar stew that's been cooking since morning, or pasta with a proper meat ragu, or maremma pecorino eaten with your hands. Sangiovese at its most relaxed. One of Tuscany's genuinely best value propositions. Carmignano is possibly Tuscany's most historically interesting DOCG. And almost nobody talks about it, which feels like a genuine injustice. A small zone west of Florence on the slopes of Monte Albano, officially blending Cabernet Sauvignon with Sangiovese since 1975, one of the very first Italian appellations to allow an international variety by law, well before the Super Tuscans were even a concept. Minimum 50% Sangiovese, Canaiolo Nero, and between 10 and 20% Cabernet Sauvignon and or Cabernet Franc. Volcanic origin soils and the Monte Albano ridge keep temperatures relatively cool for a western Tuscan zone. Red cherry, tobacco, cedar, dried violets, earthy herbs. Elegant more than powerful. The Cabernet adding grip and structural backbone. The Sangiovese keeping it fresh and unmistakably Tuscan. Minimum 8 months in wood, 20 months total before release, 3 years minimum for the Riserva. You open it with roasted chicken with herbs, or pork loin, or rabbit, or sit it down beside a simple pasta al ragu on a weeknight and let it do exactly what it was made to do. Now, the wines that deserve far more attention than they actually get. Chianti, DOCG. At base level, covers a huge area across 7 subzones. Colli Aretini, Colli Fiorentini, Colli Senesi, Colline Pisane, Montalbano, Rufina, and the newer Terre di Vinci. Minimum 70% Sangiovese, wildly variable quality. But Chianti Rufina, in the cooler Apennine foothills northeast of Florence, is the one consistently worth seeking. Fresh cherry, dried herbs, bright acidity, a structure that can genuinely age. It's the kind of wine you pour with pasta al pomodoro, or pizza, or a spread of antipasto, and it just quietly makes the meal better without asking for any attention. Rosso di Montalcino is Brunello's younger sibling. Same zone, same 100% Sangiovese Grosso, released just 1 year after harvest. Bright cherry, red plum, dried rose petals, light tobacco, all the terroir without the long wait. Designed for drinking within 3 to 7 years, it drinks naturally with pasta with meat sauce, or alongside roasted chicken, or with grilled pork that's still got some char on it. Rosso di Montepulciano does the same for Vino Nobile. Fresh cherry, violet, black pepper, earthy undertones, lighter and more immediate, and it works beautifully with grilled meats or a straightforward pasta al ragu. Bolgheri Rosso DOC is where the top coastal estates bottle their younger blended wines. Warm, generously fruited, smooth tannins, and that distinctive coastal herbal freshness. Quality consistently high. Maremma Toscana DOC covers the entire southern coastal strip. Variable, but at its best, it delivers warm, fruit-forward reds with genuine Mediterranean character, the kind of wine you open on a weeknight without overthinking it. Suvereto DOCG, in the Val di Cornia, is a small, high-quality coastal zone producing both Sangiovese and Cabernet Sauvignon as single-variety wines at DOCG level. Small production, artisan character, real quality. It pairs naturally with game or aged cheeses or grilled lamb that's been finished over wood. Montecucco Sangiovese, DOCG, around Monte Amiata. This is the denomination to actually watch right now. Minimum 90% Sangiovese, volcanic soils, a cooler microclimate. Think of it as a lighter, more aromatic Brunello. Cherry, dried rosé, mineral, earth, with excellent aging potential, and almost nobody talking about it yet. You want to drink it with pasta al tartufo, or with roasted meats, or sitting next to grilled sausages on a terrace somewhere sensible. Cortona DOC near Arezzo has quietly built a real reputation for Syrah. Blackberry, smoked meat, black olive, white pepper, violets, a northern Rhone character with Tuscan warmth. Structured, age-worthy, genuinely still under the radar, and it loves being poured alongside grilled lamb or anything that just came off the barbecue. Ornellaia inverts the Tignanello formula. Approximately 75% Cabernet Sauvignon, 20% Cabernet Franc, 5% Sangiovese. Dense blackcurrant, cedar, dark chocolate, serious tannins. Released only in great vintages. You drink it with beef tenderloin, or with lamb, or anywhere black truffle is involved and the occasion deserves it. Orcia, DOC, in the Val d'Orcia, south of Siena, gives you Sangiovese-based reds of genuine artisanal character. Elegant, honest, the kind of wine that makes simple pasta or roasted meats or local pecorino feel like exactly the right choice. Montereggio di Massa Marittima offers rustic, medium-bodied, cherry-forward reds with real Maremman character. Wines that drink easily alongside rustic pasta or grilled meats, or a board of local charcuterie. The broader Montecucco DOC covers approachable Sangiovese and complementary variety blends from the Monte Amiata zone. Honest wines with a genuine sense of place, no pretension whatsoever. Look, if you've made it this far, you now genuinely have a better picture of Tuscan red wine than most people who've been drinking it for years. I mean that. Tuscany isn't one wine. It's a dozen completely different stories told in the same landscape. So, go open a bottle. When you do, drop a comment telling me what your favorite Tuscan red is and why. I read every single one. Hit like if this helped, See you in the next one.